Welcome to the Welcome to the Typical Skeptic Podcast, where we dive deep, you decide. Questioning the matrix, from UFOs, where the shadows are known reside. Rob Khalil busting myths like ghosts in the night. Paranormal pros, secret space ops, yo, we keep it real, no fright. Typical skeptical, seeking, never sleeping on the lies. Aliens, Anunnaki, black ops in disguise. From abductions to ancient scripts, we flip the script wide. TSP style, mile after mile, truth can't hide. Hold up, TSP crew assemble, we dismantle the fable. My lab's targeted souls, breaking out of the stable. Dogman howling, Bigfoot prowling, cryptids in the mist. Mandela the fifth, twisting reality, can't resist the twist. Soul trap snapping, reincarnation mapping, holographic dreams. Near-death visions, out-of-body missions, waking up the teams. No censorship here, we fear no elite scheme. Conspiracy kings ringing bells, hear the freedom ring. The skeptical seeking, never sleeping on the lies. Extraterrestrials, interdimensional.
Welcome to Typical Skeptic Podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Welcome to Typical Skeptic Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic Podcast. I'm really excited about my guest today. This is the second time he's been on my show, and we have with us Thomas Ferrario. He was a former MUFON director, and he's been a UFO researcher for over 60 years, investigating high strangeness and the phenomena. I actually wrote something about it. I wrote, tonight on the Typical Skeptic Podcast 2751, I welcome veteran UFO investigator Thomas Ferrario for a deep dive into one of the strangest locations in American UFO and paranormal research, Marley Woods. Thomas has been involved in UFO research going back to 1969. His background includes serving as a Missouri MUFON Assistant State Director, co-founding the MUFON Dive Team, and working alongside legendary physical trace researcher Ted Phillips. Thomas became involved in Phillips' research into Marley Woods, a privately investigated area in Missouri associated by researchers and witnesses reports of unusual lights, UFO activity, strange creatures, paranormal phenomena, and other forms of high strangeness. Tonight, we're going to dive deep into the history of these investigations and be asking Thomas what he believes what might actually be happening there. So tonight we'll explore the mystery of Marley Woods, UFOs, and unexplained lights, Thomas's decades in investigating the phenomena, his work with Ted Phillips, MUFON, portals, vortices, and possible interdimensional phenomena, cryptids, the Tetra Mountain Project, physical evidence versus eyewitness testimony, and what Thomas believes after more than 50 years of research. And all that. And I'm really excited to have him here. I'm going to bring him to the stage now. Thomas, thanks so much for coming back on. How are you?
It's good. I'm doing good. It's good to be anywhere right now, I will tell you. And I'm glad to be back on, Rob.
Yeah. So for the people who might not be familiar with you, tell them a little bit about yourself.
It's a long history. I've been in it more than I like to admit now. I grew up in a rural area, and in a rural area back in the day, UFOs wasn't the type of thing people went around sharing with their neighbors. But I had family experiences in myself, and I got to be a trusted individual, a go-to guy, and they knew I wouldn't ridicule them, which working with one of my mentors, Ted Phillips, I learned that ridicule is not part of the scientific process. So I will tell you that I had so many people in my little area come to me, tell me things they wouldn't even share with their family, that I felt an obligation to go forward and get some proper training. And one day, just out of a whim, I tried to call Walt Andrus, one of the founders of the Mutual UFO Network, which was founded in Missouri, by the way. And I got through to him, and I thought I impressed the man with my knowledge, and it turned out I was just a backdoor I found out through Mutual UFO Network and another one of my mentors that Project Blue Book had been in my area and did some of the cases that I was looking into. So Walt kind of used me at first as a backdoor to get some information, and I didn't impress him at all in the beginning. He just wanted to pump me for some information, and he connected me with Bruce Whitman, the first appointed state director for the Mutual UFO Network in St. Louis, Missouri. And Bruce and I got to be great friends, and through him, I helped him with conferences, was assistant state director for a while, and Bruce assigned me to a gentleman named James Cross, a retired U.S. Air Force captain and fought in Korea, flew in Korea. And I worked 2 years under Jim's expertise. So that's basically my story. And I met Ted Phillips through a conference. I always followed Ted. And working with Bruce had him in several conferences in St. Louis. And I offered Ted my services one time as an electrician. And at the time I was going back to school to become an electrical engineer. And Ted picked me up on that. And he said, well, let me see what you got, Tom. And invited me out to his key project, Marley Woods. And that's more or less, that's my story. And through Ted Phillips, I met all the top names in the field and got to work with them. I'll tell you, Stanton Friedman, Jacques Vallée, Douglas Trumbull, Ray Stanford, and it goes on and on. But that's my background, and that's where I come from.
That's cool, yeah. And what drew you to Marley Woods? What made you first start investigating that?
I probably started in Marley in probably 2000. It was my first 2001 was my first trip out there with Ted, and we formed a friendship over the years, and Ted formed the SIU team, Special Investigations Unit, with 5 people originally, and it was an experience. I'll tell you that the 5 of us out there, I never thought we put ourselves into that position, and you know, I can go in just a little bit about Marley Woods if you like.
Yeah, I'd love to know what's going on there. Like, what are people reporting seeing and stuff?
Marley Woods is two sites, site 1 and 2. Site 1 is about 700 acres. Site 2 is about 1,300 acres. So that's a lot of real estate for 5 people at the most.
Yeah.
But what's going on out there, I will tell you, is if you follow Skinwalker now, and I will tell you in the beginning, we were connected. I can talk about it now with Robert Bigelow worked with us, and the original owner of Skinwalker Ranch. And I have worked with the producers of Skinwalker, and we were going to do some featured, a couple specials out at Marley, and it didn't work out I can go into later why it didn't work out, but Marley Woods has cryptid activity, a structured craft, unseen force, microwave activity, and that seems to be the bad guy that injures people, cattle mutilation, horse mutilation, deer mutilation, you name it. So it just goes on and on from that. And it's just a unique place like Skinwalker. And I can tell you that Jacques Vallée spent time with us. He was a good friend of Ted. And that goes back to Ted Phillips' days when Ted worked for Professor Alan Hynek, which I'm sure you're probably familiar.
Yeah.
And Ted was on doing the field trace research cases, physical trace, and Jock did the original software writing for him. And so you had those 3 individuals. And I will tell you that through that, Ted invited Jock out to Marley Woods, and he spent time. But Jock said that he felt that Marley had a higher probability for high strangeness cases than Skinwalker. Now, that's saying quite a bit because he wrote the book on Skinwalker. So,
yeah.
And he had some experiences out there, I will tell you. At this point, I just like to urge people. I have a YouTube channel. Just Google my name on YouTube. You'll find my YouTube channel. I have a lot of free, it's all free, about 30, 40 movies on there. I actually have one interview. I interviewed Jacques Vallée from out there, and he speaks about his time in Marley and what happened to him out there, what he experienced. So I urge people to see that, and like I always say, don't believe me, just research, do the research, and look into everything I say, prove it's true. And I urge people to do. Don't believe anybody unless you do your own research. So, but we had structured craft, everything.
Wow, when you say structured craft, what do you mean? Like a physical sighting of like UFO craft, like?
Yeah, classic 20-foot, 30-foot disc, put down 3 impressions in the ground. Of course, Ted, being the expert he did, compaction test with a tool, figured these things, 20, 30-foot disc, approximately weighed something in the range of 20,000 pounds. So you're dealing with a great deal of mass there. And contrary to people's beliefs, that these things are light, the outer skin is made up of materials that are extraordinarily light, but the propulsion system is made up of elements that are extremely dense and heavy. And some of the elements that it requires, the anti-gravitational propulsion, is extremely heavy. And yes, we do have pieces of this debris and craft the government has, I will tell you. But on contrary to popular belief, it is absolutely, you're dealing with elements that are 3 times heavier than lead, and the conductive properties of it is anywhere from 100 to 200 times that of gold, which is one of our best conductors, unless you use cryogenics. So people ask, if we have that technology, why don't we have a fleet of these things? I can go into that later, but one of the elements that is in the craft is not on this side of the dimensional boundary. And that's a science we can go into tonight, and I speak about now. We're coming into that realm, that time, but that is what they dealt with in Marley, in the structured craft. And cryptid activity, you name it, it's parallel to Skinwalker and surpasses that in many ways. And we've had an abduction. We've had just traumatic experience. We've had injuries due to microwave energy. Property owners have had it. Ted had it. I have it. I live with it to this day, injuries. So it is the real deal. And I will tell you, they're coming into that realm now at Marley, that in Skinwalker that we dealt with in Marley. They're looking at microwave energy as the bad guy, just as we came up with a conclusion at Marley. So it's very real. It's dangerous. And I urge people, when you go out after these things, it seems like a good pastime at first, but if you get into a real location, a situation, it can be dangerous. So always have that in the back of your mind.
Yeah. A couple of things you touched on is the propulsion of the craft, and like why we don't have a fleet of them. Like, do you think it's interdimensional? Do you think it's like these beings are coming from another dimension and coming here to visit us?
I absolutely do. And I say that with the background of seeing guys far above my pay grade. They did experiments at Skinwalker in the early days to prove that a lot of this craft, and it was interdimensional, and as Alan Hynek had proved, and it absolutely is interdimensional. The beings that come across, and believe me, when I was in the Mutual UFO Network, I was taught, we had our manual to go out in the field with. At that time, I will tell you, I call them, the journal had 31 different, I call them flavors or species of aliens. At that time, logged from eyewitness accounts. Now, when I say that, I'm saying that when they're come across the interdimensional boundary in that form, they're absolutely as flesh and blood and real as you and I. They leave physical trace. That is the shape they take. But they're playing a trick on us, the interdimensional beings. The true beings that are here behind it all, that use all the automatons, and it's like we're finding out now it's easier to grow a robot than to make one. Biologics are the best robots. They use them to come in to do their bidding and they're out. But the true interdimensional beings are exactly look like you and I do. They're the full pattern. If you'd see them in a crowd, you wouldn't know them any different. Besides their medical features, unless you do a background on it, a medical check, they absolutely would appear to be us. And I do know from research with these people that they have been in our labs, in our high-tech labs, working for going on now almost 47, 48 years. And when they come across, like I say, that they're interdimensional beings, can take in whatever shape and form they want. And I have to go into the movie, which I did like. It touched upon a lot of things. Disclosure Day was an excellent movie. I liked it. I felt they had some inaccuracies in it, and they could have went a lot farther.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I'd like to just draw upon tonight about that movie, they like to leave you in that movie at the end with a warm and fuzzy feeling that these things, interdimensional beings, are here to help us. They like to leave even abductions. It turns out well for the people abducted. They're here for our benefit. And I will tell you, it is everything but that in reality. They're not here. Our welfare is not their motivation. And there are terrible things done. When I worked with the Mutual UFO Network, I was asked to do the filming. I sat in on hypnotic regression on probably 5 different individuals that had been abducted. And one case, it was a pair of twin brothers that were in their 80s when we did the regression. And but we did one on a woman that had a fetus actually taken from her. And now abductions, I will tell you, they don't occur near as often as they'd like you to believe. They're very rare, but they do happen. And when they do, it's traumatic and it's never a good outcome. And we can go into some measures that have worked against this. I have found, but it is a very traumatic thing, and there's never a good outcome. The movie liked to portray that they're here for our benefit and welfare, and that it all ends up like E.T. And I have found it through my experience and people I worked with, it's absolutely anything but that.
I got a question. Do you believe that? Okay, so you said there's human aliens that are like walking among us, kind of like a nod to David Jacobs in his book, Walking Among Us. Like, but and I wanted to say some stuff you touched on kind of ties into like what Bill Tompkins talked about. About he said that there were Nordics working with the government for a long time, and then David Jacobs, he kind of touched on the abduction phenomena for a while. But I mean, where I was going with that is, do you believe there's the human aliens or human looking aliens, and they're, kind of like interwoven into our society. Now the gray aliens, like, would the humans be controlling them? These human aliens, do you believe they're controlling them? Or do you believe the grays are some kind of interdimensional species that's not tied to the human aliens?
I will tell you everything that I have learned from the people and my sources is, the Nordics is one form of the true interdimensional beings. They have that shape, that Nordic classic, perfect physique, white hair usually, slender. But along with that, there are other type, more just normal humans that look just like us. The grays are the automatons. They are you might say that's their form of biologics, the robot that does their bidding, their work. That's why when you get into the science and the reports, this makes no sense in our physics or nature. Of course, they've been reported. They absolutely have no sexual organs. Not much of a mouth, maybe a slit sometimes. And the descriptions vary, but overall, you get the picture of a gray automaton that is more or less their biological robot that does their work for them. And they're safe go-between between us and them. And then the grays take.
What happened? He froze, guys. We'll wait to see if he comes back. We'll hold on. Let's see what. Oh, you back? Okay, you froze there for a second.
Yeah, I know. It just kind of went away there for a second, which happens to me a lot when I do podcasts, I would tell you.
Mhm.
At times there's been, I will tell you, the people we worked with, Bruce and I, we've had a lot of interference, let's just call it that, with certain people we worked with. So,
Yeah. I can imagine, because you're disclosing the truth about this stuff, and like people, for whatever reason, the government doesn't want us to know what's really going on. I mean, like it's, I feel like it's all done by design. It's like, and then they put out misinformation to put us, to get us on looking one way while they're doing something else, and it's all one big clusterfuck. Excuse my language, but like,
Yeah.
it's that's why I like having people like yourself on, because it seems like you're investigating. You want the raw truth of what's really going on, and you want to prove the real phenomena. It seems like.
I do. And, I can talk about it now at the time. And it's a sad fact when you get older. I'm going to be 72. I can't believe it. But years ago when I started with Bruce, there was a time before 2000, the government, because Bruce was head of the Mutual UFO Network in Missouri at that time, he was approached, and the government, that's why when I hear about disclosure now, I'll go into that, what disclosure truly is. But there was a time when the government approached Bruce. They wanted to do disclosure, and they wanted the Mutual UFO Network to be involved in this. And because St. Louis was the parent company where it started, they asked Bruce to be a part of this. And Bruce asked me to accompany him. And I will tell you, we worked with an individual. Now, this sounds X-File-ish as can be, but we worked with an individual called, all we knew him by was Red, that approached Bruce. And they wanted to do disclosure. And I accompanied Bruce. I told him I would go with him. And we went to Las Vegas one time, 1999. They were going to do disclosure at Area 51 of all places. They were going to have a press conference there, a Mutual UFO Network and another organization and the press. We got in there 3 hours before we were going to leave our motel room to go on Janet Airlines, of course. That way all the workers go into Area 51. 3 hours before, after a 2-day wait, they called it off. So we went back home. Jump forward about 2 months. Red contacted Bruce and offered again. They wanted to continue disclosure. And Bruce said, well, I don't know what can be gained by this. You called it on. Oh, no. Red reassured us it's going to happen. So he gave us an invite to Maryland. And this sounds again like a movie, X-Files movie. We went to Maryland. We went actually to Quantico. We went into a long, just like in a movie, big room, long table. Members of the press were in there, another UFO organization. And each group of people had their own handler, like we had Red. We waited at that table for 4 hours. And our handler came out, Red came out and came up to us and he said, well, guys, it's off. They decided not to do it again. And at that point, we weren't the only ones aggravated. And Bruce spoke up. He said, I'm tired of this shit. We're not going to play this game no more. And at that point, I think Red got a little irritated because we were there at he's the one that got us invited there. And Red said, well, guys, let me tell you the way it is. He said, there's two regimes in this, the old regime and the new regime. The new regime, when all this information out and they want disclosure, the old regime feels they're not going to spoon feed this stuff to anybody. It's not their job. And they call the shots. They sign the paychecks. And that's just the way it is. And so anyway, as a result from that, though, Red said, well, I'll try to make it up to you guys. And he took Bruce and I to a gentleman in Maryland, a gentleman named Ray Stanford. And I don't know if you ever heard of that name, Ray Stanford.
That sounds familiar, but I don't know for sure,
He actually wrote the book, Sakura Saucer in the Pentagon Closet. And he actually did back engineering for the government. He ran Project Starlight, was a private firm that ran Project Starlight for the government, which was the first, he even made the equipment, the first laser guided targeting equipment, photographic equipment to track and photograph UFOs back in the day. and in the 60s, and had a lot of success, I will tell you. And Ray back engineered a lot of the remnants that the government had, and had a lot of success with this. And he gave Bruce and I a whole day lecture and showed us things. And at that point, Red left, and we appreciated that contact. And I stayed in contact with Ray. He passed away a couple years ago, but the man was a genius, and it was monumental what he did, and the experimentation he did with the equipment they made, and it's been documented. But that was our touch, and I will tell you that we learned things through Red when we spent time with this man. He filled us in on a lot of back engineering projects, and over the years, and I got to say that one of the things I hate about being older is a lot of the people I dealt with are gone now, and I'm one of the few left. But Red filled us in on a lot of fine points on what the government had at their disposal, what the craft that they had. And I will tell you the thing that shocked me the most, though, behind this was Red filled us in on a connection. And you want to know deep state, you want to know what, and I know just in Disclosure Project now, if you follow it now, the last couple of days, they said that the door's been shut on Trump, even on disclosure anymore. That's it. There's not going to be any more files coming out or photographs. The deep state put the lid down. And I will tell you that a lot of what the deep state is, and this is hard to comprehend, but when we were with Red, he orchestrated some things he showed us that besides ufology, he showed us the connection. And if I had one place to go on Earth besides Area 51 or a couple Air Force bases scattered around to prove the existence of the interdimensional beings, it would be underneath the Vatican. Now, you got to look at the country's history. The Vatican has always been the Holy See. They were part of the founders behind the scenes with our country. They taught our government compartmentalization, how to keep secrets. And to this day, I will tell you, we were showed the connection behind the scenes. The Vatican, and it gets into the Jesuit Pope, call the shots. And one of the things we were instructed, now this blew me away back then when Red shared this with us. He said, you guys can share anything one day. When I'm gone, he said, you can share any of this about the UFOs and that. But for my welfare and your welfare, he said, don't ever touch upon the subject of the Vatican and the connection between our government behind the scenes, what goes on, and the control over it in this subject matter. Now, that blew me away. So, and I said at that time to him, so we can talk about UFOs or little green guys, which I made a joke. But the church and the Vatican, and that's off grounds. Aliens are okay to talk about, but not that connection. And he looked at me and he said, and with a deadpan expression, he looked at me and he said, you got me right, you heard me, he said. So I learned at that point, and through the years after Red had passed, Bruce was contacted, and I got to say, Bruce passed away in 22 from a cancer, and it was a very fast, aggressive cancer that came out of nowhere. And I'm not leading to say that this was done. I'm just Bruce's case. This may have been natural.
You know what, Thomas? I got to tell you that the same thing happened with Dan Willis too. And Dan Willis was, he's been, I don't know if you knew him. He was kind of up in age, but he was like a long-time UFO researcher. He was actually one of Dr. Greer's 2001 disclosure witnesses, at the press club conference. And I heard that Dan, also attracted a fast acting cancer. And the crazy thing about Dan was working on a free energy device. So it's like, I absolutely believe these things can happen. Like, and it's crazy. It's like, how far are they going to go? Whoever's doing this to people to like shut people up. And it's like, why? It's almost like they want this whole topic to disappear so they can continue to control the world the way they want to control it, and not let anybody know the truth about anything. And and that's the way I feel about whoever's controlling the people, the deep state, whatever you want to call it. And maybe it's tied into the Vatican, like you said. That's what it seems like. It seems like they will go to no end. Maybe it's because it's religion. You know what I mean? Maybe it's I have so many different theories.
It's real, and I will tell you, it's in ufologists call it the melanoma from hell. They joke about it. The X-Files used to even joke about it or do stories on it, but it is, all I'll say is that bad things happen to good people. We had a researcher in St. Louis, Missouri, was one of Bruce's guys he was a computer geek. He did research. He was a tenacious man. He never gave up on anything. And about 5 years ago, they found him, and he committed suicide with a coat hanger on a bedroom door. Now, if you get into that whole theory, coat hangers are a tool used sometimes, but I won't go into that type of stuff tonight. But I will tell you, bad things happen to good people. And years later, I've experienced it, and Bruce had too over the years, I will say, and others. There was a gentleman, again, we worked with that approached Bruce wanted to do disclosure again. His name was George. And here again, we went through some things with him. Disclosure never happened. And of course, everything we went into, he offered to be on podcasts with me to give information to people. That wasn't his motivation, I know. But over the years, he monitored me. And I haven't heard from him, George, from, probably now 3 years. But when I go into areas I knew he didn't like, he'd always send me an email that night yet after I did the podcast. And it just was a short little paragraph he'd always send me. And it was just stated, he said, "My friend, you make a habit of sailing on treacherous waters." That was his paragraph he'd always send me after I do a podcast. So, wow. And I've had people, I live in a rural area. I've had people park down my county road, vehicles. You go down and approach them, they take off. I've had mail stolen. Bruce went through that. Others have gone through that same scenario. Do I let it intimidate me? No, because I'm a little guy. I have no physical proof. I've no evidence but my word, and I'm nothing, as others that get in this and speak do. But does it happen? It happens. And that's why I've actually, in my office, I've got a shelf. I've actually got 2 bottles of Jack Daniels I won on a bet with an individual. When disclosure started this time, he told me, he said, "What do you think about this disclosure? It's going to happen this time." And I told him, I said, "It's never going to happen by their hand. It's not going to happen." And he said, I'll bet you anything you want. I'll bet you. And I said, "Okay, 2 bottles of Jack Daniels." And he said, "It's going to happen. You just don't know. You just don't know. You're not connected like me." I said, "Okay, fine." After a date came and gone, and after about 2 years of disclosure coming again, I won my bet. And now, do I think disclosure is going to come? I absolutely do. But it's not going to be by our hand. It's going to be by theirs. And it's going to be done in such a sneaky way. And this is the thing one of the reasons why I'm here tonight, I'd like to relay. The way it's going to be done is through technology. Like, as I said before, these people have been in our labs working for almost 50 years. They've been a part of technology. One of their main tools that's coming to the forefront now is AI and data centers. Now, I have my own reasons I don't like data centers. But besides data storage, they're great monitoring areas. They're going to virtually, we're creating the jails. The prisoners are creating their own jails. The AI technology, I will say in another year or two, you're not going to recognize the world we live in. I know that. And let me tell you, at that point, we're going to have benefits from this AI. We're going to have free energy. We're going to have medical cures, increased food production. Anything we require, they're going to supply with this technology. And their motivation is not our welfare, I will tell you. This gets into the religious end of this, that I will tell you that their motivation is for us to look upon them, the interdimensional beings, as supreme beings, which they're not. They have some of the abilities from the physics on that side that they take with them on this side. But that is their motivation for us. When they give us all this stuff, it comes at a price. And if you question this, as biblically foretold, even your own family is going to send you in for re-education if you question this. Because, and at that point, when the government brings all this forward, here the aliens are here. They've been with us for 50 years. Look at all the benefits they've given us. How could this be bad? They've done nothing but good for us. They've been helping us for 50 years. You've been living off their technologies, so it's nothing new. And at that point, most of society will accept this. It won't be a culture shock the way that people think it will be. But that's the reality of disclosure and of what I call the false flag scenario, which Von Braun talked about.
I absolutely agree with everything you said, and we're headed for scary times if we don't do something. But see, it's tricky. It's like we can't really do anything too aggressive. Like it's like we can't run out into the streets and cause a big revolution, because then they would just declare martial law and lock everybody down, and it would go crazy, and it would be like pandemonium, right? So it's like whatever people have to do, they have to do it off the internet, and they have to do it strategically, and like. And also fight the courts. If there's anybody left I don't know if there's anybody good in court, but I mean, like, that's what my one friend is doing against the data centers. She's trying to fight the data centers in court in Ohio. Her name's Amanda Joan of Hart. And it's crazy, where we're headed. It's a really rocky situation. And it seems like we're headed towards some kind of like dystopian Orwellian type future that like, nobody in our community wants to be a part of,
It is. It truly is. And I will tell you that I have to, at this point, I have to give you my background also in this. I was born and raised a Catholic. I fell away from the church. I never in a million years thought that a ufologist, dealing with top ufologist, would ever get me back in the biblical study. But I will tell you that more ufologists that really know what's going on have been, or they're exactly where I am. And this was when Ted Phillips worked for Alan Hynek, he fell out with Alan Hynek for over a month over this. He didn't want to get in the spiritual realm. Ted was like I was. He was a nuts and bolts man. He wanted to go out, do compaction tests, get pieces of craft. That's what he was happy doing. He was an engineer. And that's exactly where I was. I didn't want to, and I owe it to people, an apology, when I got in this investigating cases in the beginning. When they come to me with a Bigfoot sighting, something spiritual, I would drop the case. I wouldn't even, in a few instances, I may have said something I regret now. But it is absolutely the spiritual aspect of this. The cryptid aspect is all comes source from the same source. It's interdimensional, and for lack of a good word, most of it is evil that comes across. Now, the interdimensional beings that come across, they don't have the authority to be here. We have the authority over them, but you can give them that authority by just asking them to come forth. Simple, mundane, like a seance, a Ouija board, meditation. Trying meditation with narcotics. And I've known people into these realms, believe me, they think they reach people, and they do reach the other side like this. But 9 times out of 10, they can't do it. It takes control of them, and that's the end of them. They can't handle it because they don't know what they're truly dealing with. It is evil, and it is all biblical. And I know people like a lot of ufologists, it's changing the tide now, I will tell you, but a lot of ufologists in the early days would like to throw rocks at people if you even went anywhere near biblical aspect. But in St. Louis, we had a very great man named Reverend John Schroeder, and he was like a field chaplain to McDonnell Douglas and James McDonald in the early days. Of course, you may know that Gemini, the Apollo, the early space program was made in St. Louis, Missouri. And it just so happened that that's why MUFON was started in Missouri, because the engineers in McDonnell Douglas had questions. They seen proof. The astronauts came to them with information. They had actually, at that time, they were actually getting in materials. And so Mutual UFO Network was started for a scientific approach to study what's truly going on. And Reverend Schroeder was there. He was like a field chaplain at McDonnell Douglas. He listened, and when the astronauts came back after they were being trained, they spoke. He was their chaplain. They told them things. They couldn't get their mind around some of the things they seen, experienced, and they shared it with Reverend John. And he actually wrote a book, The Prophetic Ministry, when he was very young. His family had UFO experiences, and he had experience with it, how real it was. So the Mutual UFO Network back in the day, I'll tell you, was the go-to place to get information from. And I draw the contact there between the X-Files, and there's more things there than you'll know. As Bruce Whitteman in the early days in St. Louis and in the 80s and 90s, even people in LA would come to St. Louis for UFO conferences. And one instance, there was a young gentleman came to one of Bruce's conference, and Bruce, of course, had people like Stanton Freeman, Richard Hoagland, and others in the front. Dr. Carol Rosen, which was von Braun's assistant, the rocket scientist assistant. So it was a place to go in not only in the United States, but the world. And in one instance, Bruce had a gentleman, he ran the conferences, and he looked in the back of the room. There was a young guy leaning against the wall with a notepad and taking notes. And Bruce went back there and asked the guy, he said, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm here to see the conference, but I didn't buy a ticket. He said, I couldn't afford a ticket. And Bruce actually said, well, come with me. And Bruce took him up. There was an empty chair by him sitting up front row. And they talked in the meantime. And he told Bruce, well, I'm writing a book, or I'm trying to do a movie or TV or something about this subject matter in a good way. And he said, they told me back in LA to come here to St. Louis. And so anyway, Bruce introduced him to all the speakers. And now the kicker on this whole thing was the gentleman's name, Bruce said, was Chris Carter, the originator of the X-Files, the writer of the X-Files, of course.
Wow.
So, and Bruce contacted him several years to try to get him to do a statement about how he got a lot of his information. And so Bruce even had that connection. We lived like the X-Files for a period, and it's unreal, the connections that Bruce got into, believe me. So
yeah. What I wanted to get into was some of the evidence that you guys got from Marley Woods, or just like some of the evidence that you've seen like in throughout your history as a ufologist. Like, you know, I'm really interested in the evidence as well. Like, you know, like I mean, it could be anything from supernatural evidence to like craft landing evidence to like Bigfoot footprints to cattle mutilations. I'm interested in hearing it all. Like, what all have you heard about? Like, or what all have you seen, or whatever? You know? Yeah,
I will tell you the physical trace we got in Marley in the cryptid realm, and we had everything skinwalker-ish, like the hooded wolf-like figures in walking in progression. We had that.
Dogmen, right? Dogmen.
The dogmen. We had that, an individual out there, a caretaker, shoot at it. He got close to him. One turned around and looked at him. Classic dog, wolf face. He shot it, and the individual turned, no effect. And as they moved in a progression of 6 away from him, they just kind of floated into a mist and they were gone. And one of our greatest cryptids was what we called it was a white polar bear / sloth creature. The rancher on site 2, he estimated this thing to weigh over 400 pounds, and the man could judge cattle on the hoof within a couple pounds. He said this thing had to go over 400 pounds. He got his rifle out. He shot at it, and he said he made it red, which indicates there was blood. He said, now the strange thing about this was it went through a brand new that he had put up 4-strand barbed wire fence. Now, when he said it went through, he didn't mean it went over or under. He said it was like it just, like a mist, went right through, passed through this fence, not affected, like it wasn't even a hindrance in it.
Wow.
Now, we got out there 2 weeks later. We were trying to get a permanent presence out there. We never got it. When we were working with Bigelow, we were getting funding to do that. It never occurred. But when we got out there 2 weeks later, we found 16-inch long white hairs on the barbed wire on this fence.
Wow.
Ted sent them in to Phyllis Budinger, which was his go-to person over the years, even with Heineck. She did microscopy on this hair. They did crude DNA work at the time, not mitochondrial, but just a crude. It came back, no known match, no known in the subject. We have pictures of a normal hair. This hair structure was like nothing she'd ever seen. We had cast. It set down. We had cast of the foot pads in the mud. So we had physical trace from this creature. Now, it was only seen out there by the rancher's daughter one other time. Now, do we think there's a living, breeding population of these things out there? No, we know there wasn't. You could go through the woods with 1,000 men, and you would never find this thing, just like a Bigfoot sighting out there. When they're there, and they leave physical trace. They're interdimensional, but when they're gone, they're gone. And that's what we dealt with out there. And besides cattle mutilation, a very graphic horse mutilation, deer mutilation, it goes on and on. The high strange.
Why do you think things are being mutilated? What do you have a theory on that? Like, I mean, I know there's been a lot of theories from, like, I know, I've watched Linda Moulton Howe over the years. She's kind of like the authority on cattle mutilations, or
I will tell you, a very good friend of mine. Are you familiar with Christopher O'Brien?
Yeah, I interviewed him once. He died. He passed away, right?
He passed away. Yeah, and it's a strange deal there. He
wrote a book called "Stalking the Herd," right? He wrote a book. Yeah.
But Chris made it out here to Bruce's conferences all the time. Chris even stayed at my house a couple times. We brought him into Marley, and he absolutely believed that cattle mutilations were the same deal going on with Linda Moulton Howe, and of course Snippy the horse that they researched. They did great. And Chris's book, Stalking the Herd, he did great work. He was a premier in that study. So he thought that Marley had the same exact thing going on there that he dealt with. And when he got to our horse mutilation, he thought that was one of the most bizarre. I mean, I can just describe that to you in a short account. But it was a deal. The rancher at Site 2 had a favorite horse in the barn within sight of his house. He came down in the morning when he'd run the fence line to check for his cattle on foot. He went in the barn, fed his horse some sugar, went on to run, close the gate, close the door, went on to run the fence line, was within earshot and sight of the barn the whole time. About 20, 30 minutes later, he came back by the barn to walk up to the house. He noticed the gate was ajar and the door was open. He goes up to the door and he described to us what he found was a slaughterhouse. Pieces of horse flesh on the rafters, blood on the walls, blood on the ground. It was as if this horse had exploded. Now,
whoa,
what does this and why? But the thing about it is, and when we did the film with Ben Hansen on UFO Witness, they tried to recreate this, and they kind of messed up the facts on it a little bit. But they said the next morning, but it was actually within 20, 30 minutes, which he was inside of the barn in earshot, which right there tells you what could have done this in that time frame. Didn't hear anything, didn't see anything unusual. finds this horse in this state. Again, we got out there about 2 weeks later. We took blood samples. We took some tissue. Him and the neighbor, this affected him so greatly. They got the big pieces of the horse out. They burned it. He didn't even want to use the barn anymore. We got back out there. We were going to do more sampling, and he had burned the barn down. He couldn't deal with looking at the barn anymore. And it was an older barn, but I have photos of us in there taking sampling, and no explosives found in it, nothing out of unusual in the lab work. The only thing Ted had said this was he'd seen it before overseas in a couple cases. It was if this horse had been put in a microwave oven and exploded. So there again, that's one reason why we pin microwave.
That sounds like I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I was going to say that sounds like a brutal cattle mutilation. I mean, I've never even, that's holy heck,
Yeah. And why would something do this? Except we feel if so much, the only explanation we could get at Marley through so much of what was done, we do believe that it was evil and that it was using fear as a control medium to control people. And now, does it feed off fear or uses it just for control? We think maybe both. But let me tell you, in an area like that, something like the cattle mutilation and this horse mutilation, you wouldn't believe the amount of fear that it generates.
I would say that the entities and aliens that are coming to this earth are absolutely doing that too. But the way that they're attacking people, and when you hear about cases of entity possession, and like I had an entity attachment myself, and like I can tell you firsthand that these beings, that's what they want to do. They want to invoke fear and they want to manipulate the mind. And like, I can't tell you how many people I believe that are probably have entity attachments that they don't even realize it. You know what I mean? It's I think it's more prevalent now because I feel like we're coming up on some kind of like weird like end times thing, and you almost see that, like, to not to get geopolitical, but like with what's going on in the Middle East, it's almost like they're trying to bring it to some kind of end times prophecy or something. It's bizarre.
You're exactly right, and you've hit upon the, and like I understand, I have grandchildren. It's a touchy subject for me and my wife too, but I do believe biblically we are absolutely in the end times. I do believe what I go into in some lectures, the false flag scenario, that is where mankind is brought down so low that they turn again to these interdimensional beings. People, some will call them aliens, for help, for a savior, and they'll absolutely be there and be a savior. But they're not the true savior. And what they want us to look upon them as supreme beings, which they have the capabilities, but they're not the true supreme beings. They don't have the authority to be here and mess with us the way they are. But you're absolutely right. It is end time games and scenario. And people have to realize this, that when question everything when it comes to you and supplies you with whatever you need, there's a price to pay for this. And biblically, I will tell you, if you don't like to go into the Bible as in a religious aspect, at least go into it and read it as the most accurate, scientific, historical document that was ever written by man, that in the times it was written, mankind couldn't have written the knowledge that is contained in that book. So you have to at least look at it and respect it for that. If you don't want to do the religious realm, which eventually you'll have to make that decision for yourself, believe me. But this stuff is all interdimensional. It's not interplanetary. And like Stan Freeman told me years ago, and I tell this story so much, but I can't help it, that Stan asked me, I was a Trekkie in the day. I love Star Trek. And Stan said, what do you think of that stuff? And I said, well, I can't wait till we do it. And he said, well, Tom, you don't understand. And I wasn't going to argue with a nuclear physicist. He said, you don't understand the physics of it and why it's impossible. And he said, you do realize to take a physical object, we're never going to attain light speed. To take a physical object the size of a pea would take the combined energy output of the Earth for 100 years. And he said, if you did attain that, you do realize that mass, the faster it goes, the more mass it has, the more energy required to drive that mass than the light speed. And even if you could attain that, he said, the forces needed, the energy requirements, if you reached your destination to stop when you got to your destination, exceeds that expenditure by fourfold. He said, now, do you think it's practical we can go that we can go light speed? And I said, no, I guess not, Stan. And he said, but it's all going to be done interdimensionally when we have that capability. And people always accuse me. They say, well, you don't believe on life on other planets. I said, I absolutely believe there's life on other planets and civilizations. It's just the distances are too great. We have to go interdimensionally, and everything in the physics on that side makes it possible. Now, even, communication, the communication distances by a society just to reach Earth, that society would be long dead before you could even communicate with it. So the distances involved exceed our physics. And if our physics exist here, they exist anywhere in the universe they answer the same laws. So, but interdimensionally, that's the answer. We're purposely put here on this side without the capability of going interdimensional for a reason. We're supposed to make our own decisions up, our own culture, progress at our own rates. And that's why interdimensional beings, and for lack of a better word, and this goes in biblical terms again, but they truly were fallen angels that came here. And they did breed with women. The Nephilim is a result of that. I do believe that Bigfoot, a lot of cryptids are the result of that. And that's why I have friends that are Bigfoot researchers. And in the day they start doing the early DNA work on Bigfoot, they'd come back, they'd have human DNA in them, and they throw all those results out initially in the beginning, all human contamination. You don't know how to take them. They start teaching, they had more experts out doing the DNA work, sampling the proper way. Well, guess what? When they did that the proper way, they came back even stronger human DNA in these things, in the Bigfoot. So there is that connection, I will tell you. And it's absolutely real. And like I say, when they're here, they're here. And when they're not, they're not. So
yeah. I'm sorry. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was just.
Oh, okay. What I was going to ask you was one thing that we didn't touch on yet was portals. Like,
Yes.
I know that, or I don't know, but I mean, like, I like, have you had portals open up at Marley Woods, or have people seen portals open there? Or,
Yeah.
And do you think that's where they're accessing this stuff? Like, are they're how they're coming through to our reality?
Yeah. Ted had nailed down that we had two, he called them semi-permanent portals in Marley, especially one that we could view from Site 1 on the Site 2 property. And I will tell you just a demonstration, and we learned important things from that. Ted had photographed the imagery, and I urge people to go to my YouTube channel again. I've got imagery of this there. Ted had filmed things, take photographs of things coming out of these portals at times. On one occasion, we were they built Ted actually a real nice facility, a 2-story with a big deck around it, living quarters there for Ted. We were up on the deck with a property owner one night, and this one portal, depending on the right season in the summer, about every week this one portal would appear. One instance, we were on the deck, we seen it. Ted said, we need to get to that. So him and I took off in my vehicle. It was about around, and we had to drive around, of course, county roads to get to dirt roads to drive through fields to this location, which takes a little bit of time. We got to the location. We were in walkie-talkie communication with the property owner on the deck, still observing this portal opening on Site 2. Just as a fluke, Ted and I got out. We walked around. We couldn't find any artifact light, nothing. Just as a fluke, we got in the vehicle and I stepped on the brake, and the property owner, Site 1, radioed us, "You're right there. I can see your brake light right next to the light, the portal." And we got out again. We couldn't see, but this so happens in reports of this in ufology, one person sees something, the other person just a little bit over can't see it. And we learned how directional these portals can be. Within a matter of a few degrees, if you're not in the proper exact spot, you cannot view these things. But so we learned an important lesson that night, but we do believe that a lot of times when this would open up, it'd be a precursor of the cryptid activity. And that goes into the whole other phenomena called the light balls we dealt with, which are dealing all over the world now, light ball activity. And the light ball phenomena is something that came out after the 70s. Ted always felt that the light ball could be a form of ROV. When our technologies increased, they lowered the risk factor. By going with a technology you couldn't get a piece of, didn't leave physical trace. Some instance, he thought that the light balls could actually be a medium, a form of transportation for entities, as strange as that sounds. But
then you're talking about orbs. Is that what you mean by light ball orbs?
Yeah. Ted just never liked the connotation. And there again, in the beginning, he didn't like to put any religious connotation, orbs, or he called them light balls, and eventually he called them orbs. But I will tell you, the science of light balls or orbs, the coloration is a science in its own. The white, yellow, orange, red. The red usually seems to be the bad guys. That was a precursor to us that would do. Usually after we'd see red light balls, we'd have the unseen force show up. And that was a force that would knock down steel gates log chained together in the middle, screwed into oak post, would pull hinge pins out of the oak post. The gate would be on the ground in the morning, cattle would be out, not a scratch on the gates, anything physical hit it. So what does that? Trees twisted almost out of the ground in a vortex.
Holy shit.
So people knocked down. So it goes on and on. The high strangeness.
Wow, this was a fascinating. Yeah. Let me see here. What other questions I have for you? I guess that's about it. I mean, is there anything else you want to share about what's going on, or like what you think is going to happen, or what do you think might be coming up as far as like the supernatural and what's going on with our reality?
I really truly believe we live in a time, and you sound like you're a watcher. You have that perceive that the end time scenario, and I do believe we're coming to a time when we are going to have disclosure. It's not going to be brought upon by us. It'll be by their choosing. And the sad part of it is, I think mankind, and judging from the old, biblical peace, and there will be no peace. And we're living through that period now, believe me. And I do believe mankind's going to be brought to its knees shortly. Whether that's nuclear, I don't know. Whether it's famine, or a grouping of all these catastrophes. And natural disasters are reoccurring now, again, biblically, more frequent. So I do believe it's going to be just a grouping of all this coming to a head. But I do believe mankind's going to be brought to its knees, and they're going to come to us to save us, and have technology, food, medical, free energy, and they're going to take place and come out. And at that point, no one will question, believe me, no one will question if they're aliens, interdimensional beings, or what they are. They're going to accept this because they're in that position. But the price of this will be that they want you to accept them as supreme beings. And believe me, they have the capability of that. They do come from that interdimensional boundary. They will bring lightning down from the sky and do miracles. The only thing I'd like to leave people with is they can't read your mind. Now, as far as clairvoyance and this go, the interdimensional beings, they can read your emotions. And I've seen demonstrations of this. You can be fooled, believe me. You will swear they're reading your mind, and I've seen demonstrations. They cannot read your mind. They can read your emotions, which someone skilled at this or an interdimensional being, it'll look just absolutely like they're reading your mind. And the other thing I'd like to bring up just in closing is they're dealing with, I'm trying to get this message through the producer at Skinwalker back I dealt with. At Skinwalker, they're having a problem that they're all this, as Ted said, this intelligence is always one step ahead of you. The problem with that is that they don't know yet, and I'm trying to get this information back to them. I shared it with some people, but they're gone there now. But the intelligence that's there is always there. When they're in their house, their office, making plans of what they're going to do that night, make your plans off the property. Do not make your plans or devour anything, your plans, what you're going to do on the property. Come into that property with your plan. Everyone knows what they're going to do. Speak about it, not because these interdimensional beings, you can't perceive them. You don't know they're there monitoring you. When they're in that office making their plans, setting up equipment, these things are there by them, watching them. Just like you watch something on a television screen, you don't know what's watching it. They're there. And so I always tell people, and this goes into paranormal people, I've told this to, when you go on, and there was actually a show on Ghost Hunters, one episode, they actually made up a fake scenario before they went in the property, the ghost. The guy and the gal that had this particular show, a spinoff of Ghost Hunters, they made up a scenario before they got to the place about an accident that happened in the yard. People died. They had the names in their mind. They went into the structure looking for the paranormal events. They approached the entities there. Are you so-and-so that was in this accident? Of course, they said they were. They gave the names. They told them. They responded to everything they said. It was a totally fictitious event. So that shows you the deceit involved in this. But I tell even paranormal hunters and that, you go into a situation, make your plans before you enter that ground, like Skinwalker, make your plans, your equipment. Don't do anything, plans. Just move on to the property and do what you're going to do. But otherwise, the intelligence, that's how it's always one step ahead of you. That's my
Absolutely. Absolutely. And are you still going to investigate Marley Woods? And do you guys have any plans for that?
It's a sad scenario, I will tell you. Just like at Skinwalker, when they dug in the earth, it seemed to upset this intelligence. I will tell you in Marley, it was always when we brought strangers out, interjected something new, the intelligence would show in various ways it didn't like it. When we filmed out for UFO Witness and Ben Hansen, and we were out there a couple of days filming, and they caught a lot on the episode. I will tell you, we filmed enough for 3 episodes. Unfortunately, after that one episode aired, the production went off the air, and there were reasons for that in the business. But I will tell you that they had experienced. They had drone work up there. They were going to recreate a scene that had happened to Ted and I with a light. They had a big drone, 4-foot drone with I don't know how many thousand candle power light. They were going to create the spotlight coming down on the actors, or Ben and Melissa out there. Windless night, just like at Skinwalker. They put this big, huge drone up there with a light. They get it set up with a light in the field to come on. Ben and them get out in the field. The minute they turn the light on, the unseen force takes this huge drone and just pushes it off about 200 foot, almost brings it down on top of people. and they called off shooting that night. They tried to recreate this. The only time they got a little bit of footage like this was they decided they had the drone up there. They turned the light on, and they had the actors come in under the light. They got a few shots of that before the drone would move. So it's just like what affects the drones at Skinwalker.
One of the things I wanted to close on, and I know we've been going an hour and 10 minutes. I don't want to go too long, but I do want to. This is a really good conversation. I got to ask you this question, and like, because I question reality a lot. Like, I don't have any issues with I would say I consider myself more spiritual, but like, I was raised Catholic, so I'm open to whatever. I mean, but like, what I'm thinking is, it seems like these beings are like really powerful, right? Or they have like abilities maybe that we have that we're not tapping into, which is a whole other, there's that too, that we have abilities that we're not tapping into and we're not reaching our full capability. But it seems like these beings have like a lot of like power. So my question for you is, if God created us, which I truly believe there's a supreme creator or a something, a higher source bigger than us that created us, like, who created these beings, do you think? Do you think it was the same God, or do you think they were something else? Like, do you have a theory on that? Or
it's absolutely, and this goes into theology. This goes back, in the Enoch. And, of course, Enoch was Noah's great-grandfather. In the book of Enoch, of course, you being Catholic, the Catholic Church and that Bible doesn't contain the book of Enoch. There are a lot of accuracies in it. There are some inaccuracies, but Enoch being the great-grandfather of Noah, it goes into the first earth age, and it goes into the reason why mankind was given another chance for free will on earth. The supreme beings, the interdimensional beings you speak of that have more powers than us, are actually way pay grade above us. They are the angelic beings. They are the fallen angels. They were above mankind when mankind goes back, people don't like to believe we are interdimensional beings trapped in this body for a short time. And let me tell you, when you get to be 72, you see how short a time we're trapped in these bodies. But when we go back, in the instant we leave this, we're on that side with a supreme, our Father. And but the fallen angels will be given a brief time here on earth again, and that's what's coming. The false flag, that's when they'll be set back on earth, and that's a process we're into right now. That's a process they've been in our labs for 50 years. And the parable of the fig tree, our generation will not pass away before this happens. So they do have, being the angelic bodies, the fallen angels, they do have the powers of that interdimensional more than us. They can bring lightning down. I will tell you, they can work miracles. They'll be able to bring lightning down from the sky. They'll be able to control the weather, natural events they can control. So how are you going to deal with that or question that at that point?
I got another great question for you, and I got to show you this question. I got to show you this quote from Sovereign Cosmic Wildman. He's awesome. He always leaves a lot of good comments. He says, Rob, do another show with him and let him speak freely with no time limits. His knowledge needs to be documented for all time. So that we got a lot of good people. We got a lot of good people in the audience tonight. What I wanted to ask you was, do you think they put a clamp on our DNA? Because like, where I was going with that is like the Sumerian tablets, right? Like when the Sumerian tablets came out, I read them, and beyond, Sitchin, there was other people that translated them, but like it even says, like when you read the Atrahasis, I think it is like it says that like Enlil, which was one of the Anunnaki or whatever, which could basically be the fallen angels, right? It's probably the same thing. They said they put a clamp on, or not, they didn't use the word clamp, that they said they hindered humans' life potential to 120 years. It says something like that in one of the Sumerian tablets. Do you believe that? Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And there again, the fallen angels did breed with women. They took women. They had the Nephilim, and there were all kind of, believe me, atrocity. There were all kind of creatures out of that born that weren't natural, weren't meant to be. giants were real in those days. I've had friends that researched remnant skeletal remains of giants. The Native Americans fought groups of giants back. It's recorded history that Native American culture had in the Southwest fought giants. There were skeletal remains made. The Smithsonian, unfortunately, under the control of the government, was always brought in to ridicule, pick up all the remains, put them away, hide this whole culture, the hard evidence. European people, same thing. There's, even Egypt, there's been, and even there again, biblically, it speaks about the giants freely. There were giants on Earth, as hard as it is for people. There were structures made by them. A lot of the ancient structures, they're finding out now. The pyramids weren't built by the Egyptians; they were remodeled by the Egyptians, and they're far older than the Egyptians. And so it goes back in a lot of the structures. Let me tell you, the work that's been done in the Stonehenge in different areas all across the world. The whole part of the answer is they're from the first Earth age. No, they weren't men, dragging these things on logs, or 2,000 slaves, or in some places, some instance, these structures were built where there was a population of maybe at most 10,000 humans. 10,000 humans, when you cut out the sick, the weak, the old, the women, you're down to the hundreds of people that could have built a structure that would have took hundreds of years to build. So it wasn't done by man. It was in the first Earth age. And, but that's the factual stuff of this that has been hidden from mankind. And there again, I will tell you that the church is involved in this. It's a very real thing. And it goes back even, it gets into ufology. I will tell you that the truth of it is, and it's not, believe me, people address the fact, it gets back into the men in black that we've dealt with, reports of that. And I can tell you there's three elements of the men in black, what we learned from our contact Red. The first men in black were the church. They call them men in black initially. They were men in black, the Jesuits. Their motivation was to actually, they're great scholars. They were to help people. I envy the Jesuits. They're great people. They're scholars. But the Jesuits were here. They investigated not only possessions, but ufology, UFO reports, alien accounts. But they were there to help people. They'd show up. The second men in black classification is our government. Their motivation wasn't as pure all the time. It was that of ridicule and cover up. And there were a lot of bad things done to people when they couldn't cover up facts, I will tell you. And once in a while, they were there to help people, but not very often. And the third classification, the men in black, are nothing less than interdimensional beings themselves. And their motivation was always bad. It was always to cover up, fear, to get rid of people. And abductions was part of that. So there you have another element of this that just shows you the extent of the true motivation of the interdimensional beings. I have not found anything good, I will tell you, in all my years. And getting back into the religious realm, I found more explanation for all the mysteries that I've come across. And like so many of my mentors, I wasn't going to argue with. And it's just been the one answer. And even dealing in regressions, people that, abduction runs in families. And I will tell you, we've dealt with families that had this 1-2 generations, And the only thing in all the abduction cases I've heard of that ever worked, the only thing any individual ever did, twice I've heard accounts where in a family it was preceded them, their mother and father, and then affected them. the individuals, in a couple of instances, they turned to prayer. In the middle of the abduction, they brought up the name Yeshua or Christ. The entities were gone in an instant. So it's like I say, I do believe we have the authority over this if we use it and use it wisely. But that's the only thing in all my experience that I've coming across this that I've ever heard work against these. Guns don't work. Some cases people tried mace, electronic devices. It doesn't work. It doesn't.
Do you think they're akin to like the demonics? And if so, do you think we have a misunderstanding what demons are?
I think demonic is a good terminology for this. Now that doesn't mean that there's a demon under every bush out there, behind every tree. There are true demonic beings that goes in with the fallen angels and Nephilim. That is, when they were destroyed, a lot of the souls from this demonic, they were demonized. They were demons. They were the souls out of body of a lot of the Nephilim that were sent to the inner earth, I do believe. There are true demons, but they're not like hiding behind every bush. But most of the time, the demonic, or what does the demonic work, is the interdimensional beings. Now, does that mean that 100% of what comes across is bad? No. At times, there are things that come across with the authority to be here to help man, but it's very rare, and it never interferes with free will. That's where you have to differentiate this. So you can look at that and see and judge it for yourself and that. But like I tell everybody, you have to question everything. And when this all goes down, question everything and everybody, including me. Don't believe me that, if I say the Jesuits have the Black Pope that gives the marching orders to the Catholic Church Pope. Don't believe me when I say that. Google it. You'll find out that the Jesuits do have a Black Pope. They don't call him the Black Pope, but he serves that purpose. But Google it.
So wait, I'm confused about your thoughts on the Jesuits, because in the conspiracy community, I had on Leo Zagami recently. I'm sure Leo is, and Leo just wrote a book about the Vatican and UFOs, and it's actually real. I mean, I haven't got to read it, but I interviewed him on it, and it sounds really good. But I mean, he and other people look at the Jesuits as more like a negative force in the conspiracy community. Do you have a different, or what do you think?
I do look at some of the things that are done. Just like anything, there's always pro and con with everything. I do believe the Jesuits, for the most part, do outstanding work for the better. Behind the scenes, I will tell you to this day, they are a controlling force in our own government. They're not the deep state as such. That goes into, again, the interdimensional beings. I do believe the shadow government that people call, a lot of what goes on behind the scenes that's bad is nothing less than the interdimensional beings pulling the strings behind the scenes with people. And they work a lot of favors. Believe me, they've caused a lot of wealth for certain people. A lot of people come out with their connection with them, wealthy people, and in the power that's given to them by these beings, and they don't dare cross this. They know what will happen to them if they do speak against it. So that's why there's such a strong battle behind the scenes to keep all this hush hush. So, but it is very real, and like I say, one day this is all going to be out. And but for the most part, it's I just have to, at this point, I honor the man. I'm so much a fan of Jacques Vallée we worked with out there.
Yeah.
And at this point, he gave us a phrase. I wrote it down and I printed it out. I have it up here on my wall that when we worked with him, one of his statements was, the UFO phenomena represents evidence for other dimensions that simply cannot be understood apart from their psychic and symbolic reality. What we see here is not an alien invasion. It is a spiritual system that acts on humans and uses humans. Dr. Jacques Vallée. Now, that's coming from the man.
I like that. I like that. I've always been a fan of his work, and that's I think that's really well said. Yeah, it's yeah, he's yeah. So, wow, yeah, this was an amazing interview. Thank you. Yeah, do you want? I guess we could finish up here. Do you want to tell people how they can follow you? And you said you have a YouTube, right?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. Just Google my name on YouTube, and you'll come to it eventually. Just Google my name and Marley Woods, and it'll bring you to my YouTube channel. And like I said, there's a lot of video there of Marley Woods, a lot of Jacques Vallée's own interview I did with him. There's a lot of my personal history. I'm an open book. A lot of people warned me. They said, yeah, somebody's going to shut your book one day. But I document myself, my work in being an electrical engineer on there, my work as a dive master, my time in Red China. I document everything about me up there. So what I am is what you see on there. It's real. And
wait, I got to ask you this real quick. Wait, what is Red China? What you said your time in Red China? That sounds so interesting. What is that?
Yeah, I was
you
there.
You mean like communist China? You mean like, is that what it mean?
Nothing UFO related, I would tell you. I worked for an industry. They built some machinery, and I went there. They were setting up this machinery, and they needed somebody to go in and try to make sure they had the electrical requirements, the supply to run this equipment. And that was my job. And let me tell you, I was 400 miles from Vietnam in the monsoon season, and they were running equipment, 3-phase electrical equipment off generators. And when it would rain, it would flood out generator rooms, and it was a nightmare. I was there a couple months, and when I got back to the United States, believe me, I kissed the ground when I got back. And I will tell you, and this, I'm not being political here. Believe me, it sounds like I am. But if you've ever lived or worked in a communist country, let me tell you, when you get back to the United States, you thank God it's the United States and it's free. And the people in Red China have a saying, and I questioned this at first, but my translator and that when we talk at night, he said when Red China, which a lot of young people don't know, Red China is communist China now. The Red Chinese was communist, but in the early days, China became socialist, and they have the saying there in Red China that the difference between socialism and communism is 7 months. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, that's the time it usually takes to go from socialism to communism is 7 months. So I'm not being political here. I'm just telling you what I see. So
I agree with you. I think we have a lot of issues in the United States, but I think it's still the best country to be in the entire world. I really do. I mean, like my dad's. I tell this all the time on the show. My dad was in Vietnam, and my grandfather was a prisoner of war in World War II. So my family has a history with the military. So it's by the way, I'll just ask you this real quick. And sorry, I know we need to go, but like, what are your thoughts on the whole thing that's going on in the Middle East? Do you have a theory, or have you been paying attention, or like, what do you it's interesting, right? It seems a little crazy though. And now they're making it seem like, I don't know if you saw this real quick. I'll just tell you, it seems like they're combining wars, right? Like Ukraine fired shots at Iran. I was like, what the F? And like, so it's going to be this crazy war, United States and Israel versus Iran, probably China and Russia. It's almost like a world war's forming, and the Ukraine's, I guess, on our side, and
I will tell you, you're absolutely right. And here again, it takes a better man than me to know, but I know enough to explain it all biblically, but it absolutely what's taking place now is biblical. And despite what anybody says, and that's why, I follow it, and I hope he's right. But whenever they have peace talks and that, I always know it's peace, and there will be no peace. And so what's happening is biblical, has been foretold, and there's not going to be a good outcome of it. I wish there was. I wish it was different. But overall, it's going to lead to a world war. And we're actually kind of blind to the fact we're actually in a world war right now. We really are. And
Like proxy wars, right?
yeah, a lot of proxy wars. And the people, the problem is you're dealing with in Iran, you're dealing with a death cult, and you can't deal. It's kind of like the old alien movies, you know, when they came here and were destroying population. They said, "What do you want from us?" And the aliens would always say, "Well, we want you dead." That's virtually the scenario we're in right now with these people. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a crazy world. It really is. Yeah, it's yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Thomas. Do you want to tell? Yeah, you were in the middle of telling people where to find you. This was awesome.
Yeah, it's Facebook. You know, I have a page on Facebook. Find me. I have the Marley Woods Research Center page. You can become a member of that free. I don't charge for anything. I don't make a dime off this. You can go in there, become a member, and I post things going on in Marley and some of Ted Phillips' work and early works, and anything that does take place in Marley or people I'm working with at Skinwalker, we post on Marley Woods page. So that's the best ways to follow us.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in tonight, and thank you so much, Thomas, and